What's going on, guys? My name is Tommy. Welcome back to the channel. It's time once again for another episode of Legacy Pathfinder Min-Maxing for Fun and Profit. Today, Mr. Tiki the Artificer requests we build us a druid maximized for wild shape without an animal companion. Why have a pet when you are the pet, right? Yeah, exactly. If you guys are liking what you're seeing, remember, hit that like and subscribe button. This episode of Min-Maxing for Fun and Profit was brought to you in part by Arcadia. Now, before we dive in, a quick word on the future of the channel. Now, last week, we posted a poll asking if we should alternate between Legacy Pathfinder and the playtest for Min-Maxing for Fun and Profit. The Oracle video before this, and hey, if you want to learn how to channel energy real good, follow this code right up here, was a patron request, and as always, the patrons, you guys who help me pay for food, keep the lights on, and most importantly, do the thing that I love, will always have your way at this channel. You name it, we'll do it. But the rest of the world has spoken, and officially speaking, henceforth, we will be alternating between Legacy Pathfinder and the playtest for our optimization videos. Which is good, because there's no less than 18 videos requested for Min-Maxing for Fun and Profit that were put on hold as the playtest came out and we had other things we were doing. Everything from the fastest initiative to optimizing kineticists and witches to sacred geometry. Yeah, we're doing that kind of math. We'll be coming right at you here with a couple of exceptions. The first exception, again, is if I get a patron request, we will cheat the order. Patrons get to call it first. So if we end up being on the playtest for a month after 4 patron requests or vice versa, that again is how it is. Also, as the playtest moves forward into 2nd edition and splat books are released, our episodes of Min-Maxing for Fun and Profit will cover the splat books as they are put out. We get new toys in our hands, we learn how to break them. Of course, for you guys, that's the name of the game. But for now, let's build us a druid, shall we? Okay, so the Pathfinder 1st edition druid probably is the most powerful class in the game, short of like classes that can cheat RNG. It's incredibly hard to keep this class down. It has basically every tool in the toolbox at its fingertips. For one, we are a divine caster. All we have to do is get to our daily prep or spend an hour, and we have access to every single solitary spell on the druid spell list. We are literally Gandalf outside the doors to the mines of Moria without Frodo to get lucky. Can't figure it out? Need a spell? Sit. You'll have it. Secondly, Wild Shape, the thing we're building around, is the most modal toolboxy ability in this game, flat out. It is literally only limited by your knowledge of the animals, magical beasts, plants, dragons, elementals, etc. that exist in the game, and how many bestiaries you brought to PFS. Need a fly speed, need a swim speed, earth glide, and anything in between. You have regular access to that as a class feature, which allows you to be the master of exploration, which allows you to get underwater and not drown, cover great distances in a single bound of your wings as you fly. You see what I'm saying, etc., etc., etc. Now, the third piece of what made the druid so powerful is a piece we will not be covering, as we have been requested to not have an animal companion. An animal companion, now, of course, if you chose a good animal companion, is a very powerful thing for most druids to have. The classic answer for what makes a powerful animal companion in Pathfinder 1e would be something like a tiger, a dinosaur, a war cat. By and large, something with a really fast move speed, pounce, and lots of attacks. This build combines both one of my own builds that I've done on a hunter and a build that was played at Hail the Gorilla King. Follow this card right up here if you didn't watch our sweet Pathfinder 1st edition send-off tournament, but more on that in a second. This druid is for you if, for one, you don't like managing 2 character sheets at the table. Some of us do not. That's perfectly fair and reasonable. It can be a lot to track for sure, especially when you're tracking your wild shapes and stuff. It's also great in a lower magic setting. Now, of course, there are some magic items we will be using for value, but in a lower magic setting or in a setting where you might not have as much wealth by level or an item crafter, the animal companion can eventually fall behind because you can't gear both it and you out. This build only needs to gear out you. Now, down to business, the goal of this druid is to achieve rapid coup de grace attempts by grappling and using Throat Slicer. Like I said, this is a variant on my Rise of the Rune Lords Orc Hunter, how I was playing my Warcat companion. It would pounce, grab, get to greater grapple, cheat some stuff around, and then bite your head off. And someone known only in myth and legend here at the channel as the Rocktopus. Truly, I thought about just covering the Rocktopus video here because holy crap, that build was terrifying. I'm stealing some things from it, so Leo, you the man. Thanks for letting me borrow this without me asking, but also, you're still great. It revolves around getting your hands on the bad guys with a really big CMB, and then moving to the Throat Slicer feat as fast as possible to administer a coup de grace. Now, our choice of race for this build is very, very, very meticulous. If you have third-party race access, there may be something better, and Tiki, I can hear you now saying you could do this better in third-party. For the sake of everyone else who may not be allowed to use third-party, this build will be 100% Paizo first-party, and we will be playing a Tengu. We have to play a Tengu for this build to work because we need, out the gate, 3 natural attacks. From jump, a Tengu has a 1d3 bite attack, and if we drop sword trained, we can grab 2 claw attacks that are primary attacks that deal a d3 points of damage. This Tengu is also treated as having improved unarmed strike for the purpose of qualifying for other things, which is huge for how this build works. Nevertheless, the name of the game here is to be sure you have 18 strength out the gate, just period, flat out, we must have 18 strength. We're going to be mostly in melee, so pad that con of yours that has a -2. Keep your dex somewhat relevant, as it will receive negs the bigger we get. And don't forget about your wisdom, because plan C of this build, because there are some things that will just flat beat what we're trying to do, is to be an awesome full caster. So be sure your DCs are high, be sure you have access to all your spells, because you have some of the best. Now, as for the class, again, we don't want to have an animal companion in this build, so we're going to trade out Nature Bond in lieu of having a domain and take an archetype that replaces it. Today, it's the Feral Shifter. A Feral Shifter is pretty straightforward. It trades out Nature Bond, Venom Immunity, 1,000 Faces, and Timeless Body to grab 2 animal aspects as per the Hunter's Animal Focus class feature. Now, a little known fact, because I don't know how many people like hunters as much as I do out there, there are several hunter archetypes that offer different animal aspects. We will be taking advantage of the fact that we're not a vanilla hunter choosing from a set amount of things, and we'll be borrowing the Scorpion from the Verminous Hunter. Aspect of the Scorpion gives you a +2 competence bonus on stealth and grapple checks, increasing to 4 and eventually to 6. Your second focus that you get at 9th is 110% up to you. If you need to buff your strength, do so. Truly, the animal focus can save you a lot of money buying the fancy belts and things, but I personally am leaving it open because that's the power of the druid. Do you need to buff your swim check? Do you need to buff your climb check? Do you need to buff your ability to jump? I believe the Shawanti have an ability that can buff charisma. It's on and on forever. What you need when you need it for minutes per level. Now, to the feats. Our first level, as many of you who know my builds might have guessed, will not be a druid level. It will be a monk level. It's hard for me to believe I'm saying this, but it will also be an unchained monk level. Yeah, you heard it here first. I am kind of coming over to the unchained philosophy, but there's a couple reasons why. For one, our CMB is determined by our base attack. The +1 to our base attack ensures that we don't fall off a little. Of course, when unarmored and unencumbered, either monk can add their wisdom to AC and CMD, which is huge for us because we're wisdom based as a druid, and our armor, shenanigans aside, will meld with us when we wild shape and not be usable. In addition, this will allow us to have proficiency with any weapon with the monk special quality. More on that in a minute. Now, the final bit about being an Unchained Monk is that we get both Flurry of Blows and a bonus feat. Our bonus feat at first level will be Improved Grapple, handed to us for free, and we'll be choosing Multi-Attack as our first level feat. The Multi-Attack feat requires us to have 3 or more natural attacks. This is literally why we are a Tengu. Bite 2 Claws makes 3. With this feat, our secondary attacks with natural weapons take only a -2 penalty, as opposed to the 5, and when you're wild shaping into stuff, you're all about secondary attacks. Now, we aren't penalized for having them. Flurry of Blows with the Unchained Monk also has a bit of synergy as well. Flurry of Blows lets us make 1 additional attack at our highest base attack, stacking with those from haste. We aren't worried about that right now, but it will come into play more in a second. Some might say we're grabbing this one a little early, but at level 3, Monk 1, Druid 2, we'll grab the piece de resistance of this build, Throat Slicer. It requires us only to have a BAB of 1, and it says when using a one-handed, light, or natural weapon, you can deliver a coup de grace to an unconscious, bound, or pinned target, though not other kinds of helpless targets, think paralyzed or asleep, as a standard action, and we're a druid. Once we're wild shaping, though we're not yet. At this point, we might just have a quarterstaff that we've shillelied and we're flurrying with. That actually doesn't sound bad, to tell you the truth. All of our attacks are natural. That means coup de grace are normally a full round action, but we get to do it as a standard, which means we're automatically scoring a critical hit. If the defender doesn't die to said crit, it's a DC 10 plus damage dealt fort save, or they outright die. We can't coup de grace things that are immune to crits, so we can be sideboarded against, and we have to pin with our grapple first, so freedom of movement hurts for us. But we have another couple of backup plans for this build if we can't run up to someone, grab them, get them to pinned, then coup de grace. As it stands now, we need a couple more feats to make this pop off anyway. Speaking of feats, at level 5, Druid 4, another feat that's just so important to the build, so important to every druid, Natural Spell. Natural Spell allows us to complete the verbal and somatic components of spells while wild-shaped. You also use any material components or foci you possess, even if these items are currently melded with you. Normally, when we're wild-shaped, we can't cast, so we lose a lot of our power. Now, literally as soon as we get our hands on wild shape, we can still heal people, we can still buff people, we can still blast people, and everything in between. Though we can't use it right away, most of our feats are waiting for a BAB of 6, so we'll go ahead and grab Quicken Spell now. This build has a couple of buffs on it, and it takes us a little while to get fully down to business to break people's necks to death. Speeding that up will always be good for us. At level 9, it's Greater Grapple. This is where the build truly opens up. Now that we have a BAB of more than 6, a dex of 13, and improved grapple and improved unarmed strike, we're looking at a total of +4 bonus on checks to grapple a foe, 2 from Greater Grapple, 1 from Improved. Improved says our grabbing doesn't provoke, but our attacks are grabbing because Druid. Now the thing about Greater Grapple is once you've grabbed a creature, maintaining that grapple is a move action. Also, you can make 2 grapple checks each round to move, harm, or pin somebody, but you're not required to make 2 checks. It's make 1, do 2. Now, more importantly, this is the combo. It's a move action to maintain the grapple and then pin. Once we've got the guy pinned, it's a move action to keep him down, and that frees up our standard action, right? So what do? We Throat Slicer. Coup de grace, save or die. Doesn't get better than this. We've got a base attack of 9 by 11th level, thanks to that monk dip. So we'll take Rapid Grappler next. Whenever you use Greater Grapple to maintain as a move, you can then spend a swift action to make another grapple combat maneuver at -5. Move action maintain, swift action pin, standard action snap neck. Beautiful. Now this next feat is kind of just for fun, though it certainly has its uses. It's kind of a sideboard feat, but given one of our wild shape forms will have several attacks with grab, again, harkening back at the Rocktopus here. Grabbing style says when you use this style, you don't take a -4 on combat maneuver checks to grapple a foe with only one hand. Also, you don't lose your dex to AC while pinning, so you can't get like one-shotted by the rogues while you're trying to pull off the combo. But imagine, if you will, an octopus. a giant octopus that has 8 attacks, all of which have grab on the end of them. Now we can grab 8 guys, using only one hand, or in our case, tentacle. Will that take several turns to set up? Yeah, for sure, bar none. But it's there, and it can be done, to say nothing of them running through combat reflexes, getting hit by a tentacle, grabbing. It's a very good Punisher build for our optimized party. Oh, follow this card right up here, by the way. We'll get you caught up on that. Now, the last 3 feats in the chain exist only for when we get sideboarded against. Instead, we'll go to our first of 2 alternate strategies. That's to switch to something that constricts, and we're going to use Kraken style. Kraken style says when you succeeded a grapple check while using this style, your opponent takes an amount of bludgeoning damage equal to your wisdom modifier in addition to any damage your grapple deals, such as when you choose to harm your opponent as part of the successful grapple check. In addition, you gain a +2 on combat maneuver checks to maintain a grapple. Not a bad feat to switch into as a swift action if you're afraid somebody might squirrel out. All 3 feats in the chain will be taken though. Throttle says wisdom +2, and you can choke out people to suffocate them, but it takes a long time to do that. Rack is wisdom +4 and some sundering, but it's plan B. We'll talk about that more in just a second when we talk about our actual forms. Now, there's going to be more feats on this build, and we're going to cheat them on with an Amulet of Mighty Fists. Said amulet can give you enhancement bonuses on attack and damage, but we're a druid. We have Greater Magic Fang that can be made permanent for that. We'll be using the amulet's ability to grant melee weapons special abilities. We'll take the training ability. The training enchantment gives you 1 combat feat as long as you've got that weapon drawn and is in hand, or it's an amulet that you're wearing, which still functions while you wild shape just like your Ring of Protection will. Least exciting but staple, combat reflexes lets you make additional attacks of opportunity equal to your dex bonus, and you can make attacks while flat-footed because we're gonna have gigantic threat ranges a lot of the time. Might as well take advantage of it, to say nothing of the fact that if we can grab them on their turn, our combo moves that much faster. Now, second feat is a little more fun, and a lot of times this ends up being a staple for animal companion builds who want to do something similar. It's feral combat training alongside weapon focus with, we'll say, tentacle. Weapon focus, of course, gives us a +1 to hit, but that's not the exciting part. Feral combat training says choose one of your natural weapons. Again, tentacle. In addition to the +1 to hit from weapon focus, while using the selected natural weapon, you can apply the effects of feats that have improved unarmed strike as a prerequisite. Again, usually this is for the tiger that wants to do this, but if you're a monk, you can use that natural weapon with flurry. That means that extra attack we got from dipping unmonk, slap on our tentacles, slap them with our tentacles, it's a win-win. Now that we've got our feats and we all can see how this works, let's talk about how wild shape works. The druid can wild shape for hours per level instead of minutes per level, which makes it that much better. At high level play, you can reasonably just wake up wild shape and you're good to go. This starts out as beast shape 1 as per the spell, upgrading all the way to beast shape 4, as well as elemental body up to 4, plant shape up to 3. Beast shape 3 will be the name of the game for us, because a huge animal is all we really need. So when we go beast shape, we'll get a +6 size bonus to our strength, a -4 penalty to our dex, +6 to our natural armor, and we get the form of a huge creature of the animal type, which allows us to use its attacks instead of ours. We also get a plethora of abilities that if that creature had, we now have, up to and including grab, which is the important one. Now, beast shapes 1 and 2 will certainly have things we can use to make the build work, but again, 3 is where it comes into the full. The octopus is a really great choice for a large animal to turn into, as it has 8 tentacles that can grab, which is pretty amazing. Again, with grabbing style, that could be 8 dudes taken out of the fight. 8 dudes that the switch hitters can come sneak attack or uber charge or whatever. 8 dudes that the caster doesn't have to worry about misfortuning first. But again, we're going into straight our best battle form ever, the one we want the most, the giant squid. The giant squid has a bite that deals 2d6 points of damage, a pair of arms that deal a d6, and secondary tentacles that deal 4d6 plus half your strength, and they have grab, and they reach out to 30 feet and they constrict. The giant squid has everything we need built in, except for, a move speed. But that's okay. We have magic for that. This build kinda sorta assumes that the party will be there to help you out, whether that be a cart to carry your huge squid butt around or somebody to cast fly on you, to say nothing of if you can cheat on overland flight somehow. Yeah, no, that's amazingly powerful. It's a gigantic reach for combat reflexes, and it's pretty straightforward, super easy. Grab them, next turn, move action, greater grapple to maintain, swift action at -5 to pin, standard action to slice throat. Of course, remember, it's a +5 circumstance bonus after you've maintained the hold, which is canceled out by rapid grappler, so you're really not losing anything. Remember how we took natural spell? Yeah, it's beyond important for this build because you will need to cast air breathing on yourself to not immediately die, or at least start to suffocate as a giant squid out of water. Air breathing lasts for 2 hours a level, so by the time this build is up and rolling, level 9, that's 18 hours of you being able to breathe air as a fish. Again, without it, we're just dead. Super staple spell. Say that 10 times fast. Next, Strong Jaw. Increases our natural attacks, acting as if we were 2 size categories larger than we actually are, except for when we're gargantuan, in which case the amount of damage will just be flat doubled. It's almost a spirited charge. Yeah, that's a thing. That's really good. In addition to our Amulet of Mighty Fist, and of course our Big 6, we're also going to grab the Gauntlets of Twisting Vines. Now, the vines moving off the wearer to wrap the thing up probably doesn't work when we're a giant squid monster, literally am tentacruel. But it's the +2 circumstance bonus on combat maneuver checks to disarm, grapple, and steal that we're looking for. Also, we're going to be wielding a weapon. Some GMs, now, will maybe say no to this part, and it's okay if they do. We're going to lose some numbers in the process, sure, but there's no rules as written precedent for this. It's kind of just GM interpretation and kind of a common sense call as well. Now, I don't think most people out there would bat an eye if you wanted to polymorph into a gorilla and wield a great axe, right? Though, of course, that gorilla is going to have a really hard time moving as they move on their arms, and to say nothing of the poor great axe that's getting dragged alongside, people would let you do it. Our giant squid might not have hands, but it does have arms. In one of those arms, we'll be wielding a Bong. Of course, letting the weapon go before polymorphing, probably super easy given the fact that it will be a huge Bong. The Bong provides a +2 bonus on combat maneuver checks to grapple. It's a bludgeoning weapon, so we can put the brawling enchantment on said Bong to get an enhancement bonus on combat maneuver checks equal to the enhancement bonus of the weapon. So that's a +7 on our grapple checks right there on a weapon we're not even wielding, we're just holding it. Now, again, some GMs will tell you you can't hold on to this thing, you can't use it. Without hands, you're up a creek. I submit the following. A Bong is essentially just a wooden stick with a loop running through it, kind of a brace that we can use to bind people up. I see no reason that a giant squid can't wrap its tentacles through the loop around the stick. I'm not asking your giant squid to use like a repeating heavy crossbow or a ballista or even like a short sword. We're not attacking with this, we're just holding on to a magic item for value. Now, speaking of value, let's talk about it. At the end of the day, Druid 19, Unchained Monk 1 has a base attack of 15. Assuming our strength started out at 18, and it should, we've invested all 5 points from leveling into said strength. We've got our hands on our belt of physical perfection or strength aspect, your call, +6, Manual of Gainful Exercise +5, and are receiving a +6 size bonus to strength. That's 40 strength. Strong boy, that's what we are. In addition, our size gives us a +2 bonus on CMB, and that Brawling Bong gives us a +7. Greater Magic Fang applied just to our tentacles, 5 more on top of that, and if we charge this thing, CMBs or attacks, it's a +2. Aspect of the Scorpion from the Verminous Hunter is 6 more, Gauntlets of Twisting Vines will add 2, and Improved and Greater Grapple together add 4. One more from weapon focus. In total, we're looking at a combat maneuver bonus of 59. Pretty reliable, not gonna lie. We wanted to do something like animal growth or enlarge person on the build as well. Neither of those work while we're polymorphed, because we can only be under one polymorph at once, so animal growth wouldn't work. Also, we're still a humanoid, and enlarged person falls in that same category because we cannot have our size changed while polymorphed. So a 59 is what we basically have to live with. Assuming that 59 bonus to the roll grabs onto a thing, we move to our next turn. Move action, maintain the grapple. Assuming that passes, we go to plus 64, minus 5 to 59. Swift action, pin them. Then we're rolling in 5d6, an average of 18, plus 20, 15 plus 5 damage on a coup de grace. When we do so, we'll still average around 38 points of damage. So on average, that's 76 points of damage, or a DC 86, or, they die horribly. There are a lot of things that are still going to get out of this. Freedom of movement, immunity to sneak attack, immunity to critical hits, all 3 will cause this to just do damage. And since we can only get up to huge, we can't grapple a colossal thing. So even with our alchemist friend riding on our face and feeding us True Strike extracts, putting our CMB up to 79, Cthulhu is still going to be out of reach. That's when we go to Plan C, which I suppose I'll talk about before Plan B, because here we are. Plan C is to be a tier 1 divine caster, which is not a hard thing to do. Full magic to heal all the stuff, blazing rainbow to put our gargantuan wisdom, which we're going to talk about in just a second, on top of everyone's saves by, tasting the rainbow under their feet and stuff. Entangle and all the variants that cause it to drain con, to say nothing of, for funsies, spawning as many sturges as you can directly on people's foreheads to bleed them dry. Can the build be sideboarded against? Yeah, but that's the versatility of the druid. Play something against them and they're just going to, okay, fine, be a full caster or turn into a, in this case, squid and snap your neck. Now, if we fight something that's immune to sneak attack or something that can't be death effects, that's where Kraken style will come in. Every single time we succeed at a grapple check, we're constricting. And finally, if all this fails, we go the constrict route. Something with constrict does bludgeoning damage anytime it makes a successful grapple check, in addition to any other effect that grapple check causes, including extra damage. The damage amount is given in the creature's entry, and usually it's about the size of the melee attack. Now, I might be interpreting the damage of the druid wrong, but looks like a giant squid is doing strength and a half when it constricts, so we've got to apply that to us, don't we? Here's how that looks. So after we've successfully grabbed something, on the next turn as a move action, we maintain the grapple. Assuming that succeeds, we will constrict for 5d6, an average of 18, then strength and a half plus a plus 5 enhancement bonus, coming down to 27. Then, from Kraken style, we add our wisdom plus 4, assuming we invested into it real hard with a base of 20, because Tengu have that, we'll land at 61 damage. Then, for both our swift action and our standard action, we'll damage the target with our tentacles, doing 61 damage, plus an additional 5d6 plus 20, averaging 38. That lands us at 99 damage twice, on average, assuming nothing critically hits. Oh, by the way, the giant squid is critting 19 to 20, so if you can find a way to jam improved critical on here, 20% of the time, it works all the time. 99 times 2 is 198 plus 61, means that going the Kraken style route will deal 259 damage on average before critical hits or rolling anything other than average constantly, which is something like a 10% chance. You probably will roll higher at some point. Regardless, that's a lot of damage to throw down on someone, and even if you can't coup de grace them, there's nothing saying you couldn't just pin them and do 61 instead of 99 for one of these, stop them from doing anything, and thus just squeeze the hit points out of them before any other shenanigans you could do. And if that fails, remember, you could just coup de grace them, or be a tier 1 full caster. You can't go wrong, but that's all we have for today. What do you guys think about this build? Can you do it better? Should I have been a barbarian? I feel like there should have been some blood rager levels on here for more strength. I like to cast. Also, hey, don't forget our traits are reactionary, plus 2 to initiative, magical knack, choosing druid, so we have our full druid level despite dipping out. Super important. Next week on Min-Maxing for Fun and Profit, though, we've got one more legacy build coming down before we switch back to the playtest. We're going to optimize us a swashbuckler. See you then.